Educational mobile apps, basic type, specific features of distribution and use. The research is devoted to the study of the development of educational mobile applications. By comparing the specifics of their distribution over the past 5 years, the authors found out the main trends in their distribution. Changes in the requirements for workable or effective educational strategies have become characteristic of modern social and cultural processes. They are related, first of all, to the new features of the audience of educational services. Mosaicism, visuality, interactivity, and virtuality of perception have become typical of recipients of education of the information age. These characteristics obviously reduce the effectiveness of the classical linear teaching and learning process. At the same time, they can be a prerequisite for successful learning in the situations where educational methods not only consider these characteristics, but also work with them. This approach requires not only a revision of teaching and learning strategies, but also the selection of new teaching methods and tools. Secondly, since the requirements of current modernity is lifelong learning, consumers of educational services are much more likely than before to be professionals who either improve their professional level or acquire skills or abilities for self-fulfillment. Therefore, studying on the run became typical, in parallel with professional activities or basic studying. Sometimes this metaphor takes on a literal meaning when dealing with self-education through listening to different types of audio materials during a run or a road trip. Children, adolescents, young people, as have been already mentioned, given the changing specifics of perception, also require a paradigm shift from learning behind the desk to learning in the game and in communication, as well as learning in life or in practice. It should also be borne in mind that distance learning has become widespread today as a forced response to epidemiological threats, but at the same time as a consciously chosen advantage. The growing share of distance learning, without a doubt, is also accompanied by a review of teaching methods and the search for information tools to ensure it. It is obvious that educational and scientific communications undergo bilateral changes. From the demand for new teaching methods and acquiring knowledge to the proposal of new information and communication technologies involved in the process of learning and personality formation. Mobile information and communication technologies can be considered as one of the effective means of educational communication in the knowledge society. This concept combines mobile devices with relevant software developed by content or adapted for use with such a device, as well as techniques and methods for working with them. The most popular mobile technologies include applications created by developers to implement a variety of tasks, including personality-centered education. The comparative method and the method of classification have been used to determine the subject matter and orientation of popular educational applications. The existing mobile apps used in e-learning are extremely numerous and diverse. At the same time, studying the area of such apps allows systematizing them. Thus, the purpose of this paper is to analyze the popular educational mobile apps that are actively used in Ukraine, identify their main types, and clarify the main educational trends as evidenced by the spread of apps given that ratio. The statistical method was used to achieve this goal. In the first stage of the study, the authors selected 500 popular apps in the Google Play collection. The selection was made on a crossover basis, namely a double search was performed. Analysis of the rubric and a separate education keyword search in Google Play Store. The findings were listed to avoid duplication. In the course of the research, the 50 most popular free and commercial applications focused on educational and developmental communication, according to developers and sellers, have been identified and analyzed. Based on the analysis of the identified apps, a list of their main types was compiled considering the principle of effect. Subtypes were also identified, groups of apps into which the main types can be divided. These are online educational platforms, language learning apps, learning tools, training simulators, social learning networks, preschool training, professional artistic skills, studying individual subjects. Statistical analysis allows us to conclude about the direct connection between mobile apps and self-education. Most popular apps do not involve the participation of school or teachers in learning. At the same time, there is no reason to talk about a gap between education and self-education. Firstly, along with the preservation of popularity of traditional platforms that accumulate video lectures, from individual speeches to entire courses, they become more sophisticated, turning into a kind of designers for the formation of educational material blocks according to individual requirements. The process of formalization has gained development with regard to them. The opportunity to not only take courses at the most prestigious universities, but also obtain a certificate by passing online exams. Another feature is that such platforms become a tool not only for self-education, but also for teaching. Foreign language learning applications remain very popular and in demand. Such applications connect millions of speakers from around the world who are interested in communication, thus making it accessible, differentiated by languages and the level of communication complexity, and an interactive educational space. The specificity of the most popular ones is a rather narrow methodological base. The main component is the creation of a language environment and insistence in the implementation of language practices. At the same time, such methods allow intensifying the teaching and learning process. Thus, mobile applications focused on learning foreign languages can be part of a set of efforts aimed at language acquisition or a way to maintain language practice and the appropriate level of proficiency in a particular language. It is worth noting the importance of such practices for speakers of minority languages, for whom, especially outside the area of use of such a language, it was previously difficult to find a way to maintain a sufficient level of communication. Thus, even in the light of globalization processes, accompanied by the growing influence of global languages, especially English, we should not forget about additional opportunities for the implementation of much less common linguistic identities, their preservation and development when needed. We should note here the importance of implementing language practices through specialized mobile applications. This trend of intensification of minority or even endangered languages, in Ukraine they include Crimean Tatar, fits into the logic of current post-colonial processes intensified by the spread of information technology. At the same time, the Ukrainian reality of these processes is manifested through rather specific but at the same time demonstrative unnaturally high popularity of applications for the study or improvement of the Ukrainian language. Prolonged Russification processes that took place in the past, along with the functioning of a common information space with Russia until now, where the dominance of the Russian language is determined by a tried quantitative advantage, have led to the formation of a large number of Ukrainians aware of the need to increase Ukrainian language skills. Part of the audience of relevant applications, numbering in the tens, if not hundreds, may of course be foreigners in need of language practices. However, both statistics and surveys show that the share of Ukrainians among users is high enough to consider this issue in the context of post-colonial processes. Thirdly, the spread and sophistication of mobile technologies in educational processes directly reflect the focus on the personalization of learning, from the variability of educational programs to the individual selection of effective methods and technologies of work. An important aspect of personalization and interactivity of education and self-education is compliance with the needs and capabilities of the audience. Thus, the remotability and interactivity of education provide compensatory functions, from the ability to access educational and scientific resources regardless of the place of residence, health, and social status, to overcoming postcolonial or any other distraction. At the same time, the analysis is the basis for forecasting the further development of this area of education and self-education. Given the sophistication of the toolkit, the increase in its number to a situation where you need to navigate the existing resources, we can predict that in the future its effective use will be associated not so much with fully autonomous self-education, but with mediation, curatorial, methodological efforts of experts. That is, the use of new technologies as an element of successful acquisition of knowledge is the most promising in the context of systemic education. Changes in the requirements for work